two leading providers of awards or recognition out in the marketplace. The leading providers are Great Place to Work and their Trust Index, as well as Quantum Workplace, which works with top workplaces and others as kind of a behind-the-scenes survey provider. The questions are very similar. The design is very similar. And the response options are very similar. It's either, almost always true, as you can see here on the screen, often untrue, so forth and so on. So the questions that were grabbed for use by these companies that are using these questions to rank companies or recognize them as a great place to work were really borrowed from satisfaction and engagement research that's been done. Some of the statements and or questions here are identical to the questions or statements you would find in other survey providers like Culture Amp or Qualtrics or Glint. Others you would find in satisfaction-based surveys that predated engagement, the surveys that were used in the 80s and 90s, if you will. And then there's a handful that go all the way back to like morale and attitude surveys that were done in the 1950s. There's no joke on that. What's fascinating about the questions that are presented here is that they just don't really get to the heart. They don't really present why people feel the way that they're responding. And they also don't always ask questions that matter to employees. And I've been asked many times, like, hey, can you walk me through why is it that Amazing Workplace and the happiness conversation is really different than what's presented by these other companies? So I thought I'd just take a moment to just kind of put on the screen, and these are online. You can find these, the types of statements that are being presented to your employees. So if you're an executive or you're a company and you're chasing down awards, which is a great thing to do, by the way, and we do that at Amazing Workplace. We have happiness awards that actually promote the fact that your employees are happy, which is a much better reason to take a job at a company than I've got the Great Place to Work trophy because I was in the top 100, which means that I happen to be in the top scores of the 100 of the companies that showed up that year or during that time period. But nevertheless, these are the statements that are presented to employees. Statements like, I'm given the resources and equipment to do my job. Now, that is pure satisfaction research. That's job demands resources research that preceded the 80s that led to the development of satisfaction surveys. And it all has to do with having enough or being satisfied, which is the origin of the word satisfaction is purely to have enough. It was created in the 1500s. According to Rome, Italy, it's probably created before then. This is a physically safe place to work. All these are really important things, but again, we're not getting into things that we're not presenting statements that tell us why employees are answering the way that they're answering, and we're also not understanding how people feel. We're kind of poking at things that we feel are important, and we're asking our employees to respond in this mostly true, always true, all the way down to almost always untrue, right? So everyone has an opportunity to get special recognition. Okay, great. I know in working with lawyers, some of the lawyers I worked with didn't particularly care about that and didn't like it. People here are willing to put in extra effort to get the job done. That's obviously a good thing. But again, this has nothing to do with happiness. A lot of these questions are either about whether our company is doing a pretty good job at doing these things or whether our people are putting in extra effort or doing things for us. You can count on people to cooperate. Management makes its expectations clear. Kind of a vague statement there. Are we talking about the person that I report to, or are we talking about overall management or senior management? I can ask management any reasonable question and get a straight answer. Not quite sure, like reasonable question, not trying to lawyer this, but that has lots of different meanings. I'm offered training or development to further myself professionally. That's a really good thing. People do care about having the ability to develop themselves professionally. Management shows appreciate, but even on that one, I'm offered that training, which doesn't let me know whether or not the person likes the training. It doesn't let me know whether or not the training that is offered is training that they prefer or don't prefer. Management shows appreciation for good work and extra effort. Sure, it's very important that people are appreciated for the work that they're doing. I think I would probably just stop with management shows appreciation. I don't need somebody to put in extra effort to get appreciated. I don't need them to do good work to be appreciated. I can appreciate them for just being a member of the team, and let them know that we value them. But that's, again, we focus more on happiness and less on these scores. People here are paid fairly for the work they do. That's a very good statement. Yeah, nicely laid out. My work has special meaning and it's not just a job. Again, that's pretty good. That's nice. When people change jobs or work units, they're made to feel right at home. That's really tied to belonging, which is a topic that we measure. Management is approachable, easy to talk with. Again, we're talking about my direct managers, senior leadership. Most individuals are not going to feel comfortable walking into the CEO's office at a multi-billion-dollar company, and therefore they would say that management is not approachable or easy to talk with. Maybe because they're nervous, or maybe because the person just isn't available. They travel all the time. Or are we talking about my supervisor, right? Management recognizes honest mistakes as part of doing business. Okay, what we're really trying to get to here is that the work environment is a safe one where it's okay to make mistakes and speak up. If you make mistakes, you're not going to be punished. It doesn't really get to the heart of that, but it kind of touches on that. Management genuinely seeks and responds to suggestions and ideas. That's really born out of what companies do with these types of surveys, like whether or not they actually are responding to and doing things based on this information. When I look at what we accomplish, I feel a sense of pride. And the list goes on. I mean, I could spend a lot of time. I'm not going to read to you I think it's 67 individual statements that are presented to people that do this Great Place to Work Trust Index. But you can look at them on the screen and evaluate for yourself. Just think of sitting down with somebody that you love, or your best friend, or if you've got children, like your son or daughter, right? Think of sitting down with them and asking them how things are going at work. Are these the things that you're going to present to them? Or are you going to say things to them like, management shows a sincere interest in you as a person, not just as an employee? I mean, that's probably not a bad one, right? You may ask, do you want to work there for a long time? But would you ask them whether they believe management will lay people off only as a last resort? I mean, there's just statements here that don't really get to how people feel at work. You could call it fluff. You could call it extra. They use this for scoring and for awards, but it is an illustration of the types of statements that are being presented to people. You'll also notice that many of these individual statements are identical to the ones that are used by Qualtrics, Cultramp, Glint, Gallup, and others. The body of research, the science-based research that went into the statements that were created back in the 1950s, many of those questions have been copied, pasted, edited throughout time over the decades, and have not materially changed. You take all these and you wrap them up, and what we're getting to as a core, which are the 10 topics that we talk about in the employee happiness conversations that Amazing Workplace creates. What we're getting to as a core are the things that matter most to employees, focused in on the relationship between the individual and their direct leader, which is the number one reason a person leaves, is that relationship is either a toxic one or one that somebody's unhappy with, and it's what drives them out the door. They can't stand working with the person that they report to. And it's not to target those individuals, it's to understand those relationships within an organization so that something can be done to improve those relationships if there are issues. The other thing that we focus on in terms of the why people feel the way they do is team. And that's simply just the people that you work with. Because if you don't enjoy the people that you work with day in, day out, you're not likely to stay. And so it really has to do with that leader, that supervisor that you're reporting to, as well as the team that you work with every day. So all of the topics that we have within a happiness conversation do dig into how people feel about those two particular things, right? So if I'm talking about growth opportunities, how do I feel about those opportunities through the lens or through the point of view of the relationship that I have with my leader? Do I feel like that person supports me? Do I feel like they have got my back in my growth opportunities, as well as my team, right? Do I feel like I'm part of my winning team and I'm able to be successful at work? And these are just some of the differences between a happiness conversation where we're really understanding conversationally how people feel as well as why they feel that way, versus the statements that you see here on the screen through the trust index that's done by Great Place to Work. And there's others out there that do this stuff, but this is one of them. I'm sure we'll go through others here in the future in future videos. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks.